I'm Reverend Leah Sandwell Weiss, a deacon at St. Philip's in the Hills Episcopal Church and a leader in Pima County Interfaith, also known as PCI.
And I'm Jane Prescott Smith. I also worship at St. Philip's in the Hills Episcopal Church, and I'm a leader in Pima County Interfaith. PCI is a broad-based organization which develops leaders and institutions to speak out and act on issues impacting our families today. Our institutions are primarily faith-based, but we have educational and other types of institutions involved as well. PCI has worked in Pima County for nearly 30 years. Our member institutions are made up of everyday citizens. We work with allies, stand with families, conduct research, and provide training and education.
Today's presentation deals with the economic impact of COVID-19 on our communities. We're going to start off by discussing small business loans. Jane, what is this program?
The small business loans are part of the CARES Act, passed by Congress recently in response to economic pressures due to the coronavirus pandemic. It's an SBA guaranteed $349 billion loan program for small businesses. Independent contractors and sole proprietors may also apply for this loan, and small businesses includes church and other nonprofits. The program was originally funded at $349 billion, although I'm sad to tell you this money has been fully subscribed. Many financial leaders believe that Congress will approve a second funding wave, so we want to give you this information to be ready if and when that second wave of funding comes through.
So, Jane, what does it mean by saying SBA guaranteed?
Well, that means that the loans are backed by the Small Business Administration. They're actually administered by our local lending institutions, like our banks.
Doesn't the SBA have a lot of regs and rules about qualifying for a loan?
I'm sure a lot of people listening to this are also concerned about how many hoops the SBA would want you to jump through. But here's the thing, they have waived their traditional requirements like affiliations or credit elsewhere so as to be able to get the most people enrolled, because the purpose of the payroll protection plan is to help small businesses keep their workers on their payroll. And if you've already laid people off, it's not too late. You can still qualify as long as you rehire them immediately upon having the loan approved. And the best part is that if you follow the requirements, which we will cover in detail in just a few minutes, the bank can actually forgive your loan. But even if it's not forgiven, it's still a good deal because the interest rate is only 1%. And the first payment isn't due for 6 months, and you have 2 years to repay the whole loan. Plus, the government is picking up all the loan application and administration fees. Finally, I want to let you know that although we'll try and cover the key points in the next couple of slides, there's a lot of information on this program that is specific to types of loan application individuals or units like churches. So the best thing to do is go to the small business websites that are up by the Tucson Metro Chamber and the Arizona Small Business Association.
So what do I need to know to apply for a loan?
Well, I guess the first thing is to get your documents together as quickly as possible. As you might expect, the program faced an avalanche of demand for these loans. And as I mentioned earlier, the first $349 billion that was appropriated has already been allocated. But if you take the time now to pull together all your paperwork, you'll be ready to act quickly if and when a second funding wave is announced. A good first step is to ask your current bank if they're participating in the program, because it's always best to work with an institution that already knows you. If your bank isn't participating, you can find a list of participating lenders at the SBA website. And you can be assured that the loan terms will be the same regardless of which lender is administering the loan. You probably want to know how much money you can get in a loan. The maximum amount is 2.5 times the organization's average monthly payroll expenditure over the previous 12 months. And it includes most employee benefits, pension contributions, employer 403(b) contributions. The one thing is you will need to be able to document your payroll expenses. If you're an independent contractor, you can use your 1099 form to document what you've been paid. You can download the application and other materials you'll need at the link on your screen. A couple quick tips. The application asks for information about and signatures of owners. So nonprofits, including churches who don't have owners, can skip those fields. Second, the form asks for the number of employees you have, and this should be your average head count over the last 12 months. This isn't FTEs, it's the number of people. This program does not differentiate between full-time and part-time employees. And finally, because independent contractors are eligible to apply for their own loans, small businesses may not include independent contractors in your head count. If you need more help in completing the application, you can find free online training that's been developed by the Arizona Chamber of Commerce and the Arizona Small Business Association at the link on your screen.
So if I was going to apply for this loan, I'd also want to know how it's going to be forgiven.
Absolutely. To have the loan forgiven, there are some requirements that must be strictly adhered to. It's your lender who will make the determination as to whether or not you meet the requirements. So if you've got any questions about a specific requirement, ask your lender. But here are the basics. First, the money must be spent completely within 8 weeks of receiving the loan. Also, at least 75% of the loan amount must be spent on payroll expenses. That can be salary, wages, benefits, but it must be payroll expense. The number of employees on the payroll must be the same as the historical numbers you submitted in the loan application. So if you've already laid off people, you'll need to rehire them. Also, those employees must be paid at or above the level of compensation as the historical numbers you submitted in the loan application. So pay cuts will have to be reversed. Keep in mind that the only other things you can use the loan money for is paying rent, interest on mortgages, or utility bills. If you spend money on other things, that amount cannot be forgiven. Also, forgiveness is not automatic. You will need to submit a request for forgiveness to your lender at the end of the 8-week period. At the moment, there's not a common request form, so ask your lender how they'd like to receive the request. You'll need to provide documentation of all payments made with the loan money to make sure that they fit within the program. So depending on how your books are organized, you may want to hold the loan money in a separate banking account. Lenders are required to make a ruling on forgiveness within 60 days of receiving your request, which should be well before a first loan payment is due, assuming you filed your request in a timely fashion. Let's shift gears now and learn about how individuals will benefit from another provision in the CARES Act, the Economic Impact Payment or stimulus checks. Leah, who will get a check?
Well, it sounds pretty simple. U.S. adults and legal immigrants with valid Social Security numbers will get checks. But as with everything, there's a lot of little complications. Who won't get checks is important to know about. The primary people that won't get checks are undocumented immigrants, including those with individual taxpayer identification numbers. This includes DACA program participants, as well as households where one person living in the household, one family member who lives in that household is undocumented. The whole family is cut out of getting any checks. The other complication is that if you have children who are over 17 but who are still dependent on you, for example, a high school senior, they will not get their own check, and you will not get a check on their behalf. This also applies to disabled adults, senior citizens, and college students who are dependents on someone else's tax form.
Wait a minute, you mean if I have a daughter in high school, a junior in high school, and she's 17 years old, I can't count her as a child, even though I've been counting her as a dependent on my tax form? But
That's correct.
because she's a dependent, then she can't get the $1,200 check either.
Right, that's right. And the same for college students who may be working and have some income, but if they're still on your tax return, they will not get a check. So there's a few other categories of folks who won't get checks as well. If you have delinquent child support payments, this is a provision of federal law that requires that the money, if they know, federal government knows about it, that they take it out of your tax refund. And so you will not get a payment. Now, you will get money if you owe back taxes and other government debts that often are garnished in tax refunds. But the thing is that you need to still be aware that the banks or other companies could garnish private debts, debts that you owe to somebody outside the federal government. The other question, of course, people who make more than a certain amount of money will not get checks or will get a reduced amount. If you made too much money in 2019 and now you've lost your job, you won't get a check. And finally, people who had children or adopted children in 2020 won't get a child's check because the IRS does not know about the existence of these children. This may be fixed when you file your 2020 tax return, however.
Wow, that's a lot of people that aren't going to get a check. But for those of us who do manage to fit within or perhaps outside the exceptions, how much money will we get?
Well, here's a screen that shows this amount. If you were single and you filed that way and you have your adjusted gross income is under $75,000, you will get $1,200. If you are married filing jointly, you get $2,400 if your 2019 adjusted gross income was under $150,000. And if you filed as head of household, you would get $1,200 if your amount was under $112,500. And then there's a child's check of $500 per child who are under the age of 17. So Jane, there are other requirements as well that they will prorate the amounts you get if you make between $75,000 and $99,000 as a single person, $150,000 to $198,000 for if you filed married filing jointly. So if you have some concerns about what this prorated amount might be, you can check out this calculator to get a better idea.
That's a good idea. That means I don't have to do the math myself.
Right. There are also limits. So if you made more than $99,000 as a single person, $198,000 if married filing jointly, and $136,500 if head of household, you will not get a check.
Well, I make less than that, so what do I need to do to get my check?
Well, assuming you filed a 2019 tax return, you don't need to do anything at all. And a qualification that you were getting a refund. The IRS will use your information on your tax return to deposit a check in your bank account. In most circumstances, that's right. Now, that earlier there was some proposals that if you didn't file because you were a Social Security recipient or a railroad retirement recipient and you didn't make enough money to be required to file, you would still have to file. But that has been changed. So the IRS will use your information on your 1099s from Social Security and railroad companies, and they will generate economic income payments for you, even if you didn't file taxes. If you receive Social Security disability insurance, you will also be covered in this plan. However, if you're in this situation and you have a qualifying child, for example, perhaps a grandchild, you will need to file a form to get a children's check. And this form is available at the URL here on the screen. There are other individuals, perhaps low-income workers and certain veterans and disabled people who also aren't required to file a tax return, but you're still eligible to get an economic impact payment. So you need to check the website for more information.
So I heard that the filing date for 2019 tax returns has been extended by 3 months out to July, and do you think it's still a good idea to file right away?
Well, you might want to file it early if you need to update your direct deposit information, or you would qualify under the 2019 standards, but not under 2018's. For example, if you made too much money in 2018, but you have lost income when you paid your taxes for 2019. So that might be an advantage.
And if I don't file 2019 taxes?
The IRS will use your 2018 adjusted gross income. But it's possible that if your 2019 adjusted gross income is more than it was in 2018, they might need to get some money back from you at the end of the year. But one thing to be aware of, this is not considered taxable income for your 2020 taxes. There is not a program to take back any of this money at all.
Okay, so I guess then, when will I get my check?
Well, some people have already gotten their checks. It said mid-April. I know someone who got their check this past Monday on the 16th. If the IRS doesn't have your information, it may take several months, however, to get a paper check. But as always, you can check the status of your check at this URL, the Get My Payment link. You can also use this to provide information as to your direct deposit and where you want that to be. So this is some of the other links from the IRS where you can get more information. The coronavirus tax relief page has some general stuff. What you need to know about economic impact payments, that's the official name for these stimulus checks. And then this page will have links to either find out the status of your check or to file other information. One other thing, we need to watch out for scams and fees. The IRS doesn't initiate contact with taxpayers by email, text messages, social media channels to request personal or financial information. So if you get anything like that, perhaps some fishy checks, some sketchy phone calls or emails, or people claiming that they can speed up the process of getting a payment, please report those to the police and the IRS. Also, you may want to check on other companies who have been authorized to prepare websites to help you out. For example, Intuit and TurboTax, they have a new coronavirus tax center, but they may also have links that would steer you into some of their other products for which you'd have to pay. So remember, you do not need to pay anything in order to get your stimulus check.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for this presentation. And please share your stories about COVID-19 and your family, and about your experience with applying for and receiving either the Small Business Association loans or the stimulus checks. You can do that on our website. We at Pima County Interfaith stand with you.